The fence that split the valley had been there longer than most men could remember. Cedar posts, weathered silver wire, stretched tight by generations of stubborn hands. It ran straight as a rifle barrel between the Caldwell, spread to the east, and the Reyes land to the west, cutting the grass like a scar that never healed. Folks in town said the fence wasn't what divided the ranches. It was the blood, the grudges, the long memory of insult piled upon insult until nobody remembered how it all began. John Caldwell remembered enough. He stood at the broken stretch just before dusk, hat pulled low, eyes scanning the sagging wire where a cottonwood had fallen during the last storm. The damage was bad posts. Snapped wire snarled like a wounded snake. If cattle crossed in the night, there'd be hell by morning. Another accusation, another hand on a gun, another step closer to a range war no one truly wanted, but everyone seemed ready to finish. John crouched and ran his hand along the splintered wood. He could hear his father's voice in the back of his mind, stern and tired. Never let them think you're weak, son. Weakness invites bullets. His father had died, believing that, buried with a rifle across his chest, and hate still hot in his veins. A horse snorted behind him. John turned, slow and careful, hand hovering near his holster. A lantern glow flickered through the gathering dark. The rider reined in on the western side of the fence line. Her silhouette, unmistakable, even before the light touched her face. Scarlett Reyes. She swung down from the saddle with practiced ease, boots hitting the ground softly. Her dark hair was braided tight, her shoulders squared beneath a worn jacket. She held the lantern high, its glow catching on the broken wire and shattered posts. So it finally gave way, she said, voice calm, unreadable. John straightened. The storm had no respect for property lines. Scarlett's mouth twitched. Not quite a smile. Storms usually don't. They stood there, the fence between them even in ruin. Silence, stretching thick as molasses. Their families had traded words and bullets for years over water rights. Grazing land, pride. John had grown up hearing Scarlett's name spoken like a curse. He suspected his own was no kinder on her side. If your cattle wander over, John said carefully, there'll be trouble. And if mine cross, there'll be trouble, she finished. Same song. The lantern hissed softly. Crickets began their nightly chorus. Scarlett set the lantern down on a post stump and studied the damage with a rancher's eye. This won't wait till morning, she said. Not if we want to keep things from getting ugly. John frowned. You suggesting we work together? She met his gaze, steady and unflinching. I'm suggesting we fix what's broken before other folks decide how it gets handled. John hesitated. Every lesson he'd learned warned him away from this. Yet the fence lay there, accusing and fragile, daring them both to choose differently. Night crept in, stars beginning to prick the sky. Finally, John nodded once. We do it quiet. Scarlett picked up the lantern. Midnight, then no witnesses. As she mounted and rode off, John watched her go, the weight of an unfamiliar choice settling on his shoulders. For the first time in years, the fence line didn't feel like a battlefield. It felt like a test. Midnight wrapped the valley in velvet black, broken only by the spill of moonlight and the glow of a single lantern set low by the fence. John arrived first, carrying tools over his shoulder pliers. Hammer, coils of wire. He worked by habit, setting posts where he could, waiting. Hoofbeats approached softly. Scarlett emerged from the darkness, leading her horse. A second lantern hanging from her saddle, and a bundle of fresh posts strapped behind. She tied off a few yards away and joined him without a word, setting her lantern beside his. The light mingled, shadows dancing across the ground. They worked in silence at first. John drove posts while Scarlett stretched wire, her hands quick and sure. Their movements began to find a rhythm, as if they'd practiced together for years, instead of standing on opposite sides of a feud. After a while, Scarlett spoke. "My father would hate this." John snorted quietly. "Mine too." She glanced at him. "Funny thing, isn't it? How the dead keep trying to run the living." John paused, hammer resting against his thigh. "They taught us what they knew and what they feared," she said. A wire snapped tight under Scarlett's pull, humming faintly. John secured it, their hands brushing for just a second. The contact startled them both, not with anger, but with something else, recognition perhaps. "Town's buzzing," John said, returning to his work. "They think another fight's coming." Scarlett smiled thinly. "They always do. War makes people feel important." They moved down the line, replacing what the storm had taken. Sweat dampened John's collar, despite the cool night. Scarlett's braid loosened, dark strands escaping to frame her face. In the lantern light, she looked less like an enemy, and more like a woman who carried the same burdens he did. "My grandfather built this fence," she said quietly. "Not to keep you out, to keep the peace." John drove a final nail home. Somewhere along the way, folks forgot that. Scarlett nodded, or pretended to. An owl called from the trees. The valley felt hushed, as if listening. When they finished the worst of the damage, Scarlett leaned against a post and exhaled. "This could change things," she said, "or make them worse if anyone finds out." John wiped his hands on his jeans. "Then we don't let them." She studied him for a long moment. "You willing to keep meeting like this, until the line's strong again?" He met her gaze. "Yeah, I am." They extinguished the lanterns, one by one, darkness reclaiming the fence. As they parted ways, John realized the war everyone feared had already been delayed by wire. Wood and a fragile trust forged under the stars. Night after night, they returned. Sometimes they worked in companionable quiet. Other times, words spilled out as naturally as sweat. Stories slipping free in the dark where no one else could hear. John learned Scarlett's mother had died young, that she'd taken over the ranch before most folks thought her capable. Scarlett learned John had turned down offers to sell, clinging to land that felt more like responsibility than legacy. One night, a rider passed on the distant ridge. Both froze, hands stilled on the wire, breath held until the shadow moved on. Their secret felt fragile then, a thing that could shatter with a single shout. "Why keep fighting?" Scarlett asked once, tightening a brace. "If neither of us wants war," John considered, "because stopping feels like betrayal, like letting the past win." She nodded slowly. "Peace takes more courage than pulling a trigger." They finished a long stretch near the creek, the fence standing straighter than it had in years. John stepped back, pride warming his chest. "This'll hold." Scarlett smiled, genuine this time. "So will we, if we're careful." But ghosts didn't rest easy. Rumors spread. A cow found on the wrong side. A shot fired in the air one afternoon. Tension coiled tight as wire under strain. On the fifth night, Scarlett arrived late, breathless. "My cousin's been drinking," she said, talking big. "If he comes out here, we'll finish quick," John said. "Then lay low." They worked faster, hands moving in practiced harmony. When a distant shout echoed, Scarlett flinched. John placed a steadying hand on her shoulder. "We're almost done." She looked up at him, eyes bright in the lantern glow. "Promise me something." "What?" "If this breaks wide open, Don't let it turn you hard. John swallowed. Same goes for you. They finished the last post just as dawn hinted at the horizon. The fence stood whole again, quiet and strong. Scarlett reached out, touching the wire lightly. Funny, she said. All that hate, and it comes down to this. A line we choose to mend. John smiled. Or tear apart. She met his eyes. I choose mending. Morning brought questions. 2 men from town rode out, surprised to find the fence standing firm. They exchanged looks, suspicion flickering. Looks like someone's been busy, one said. John shrugged. Storm cleanup. Scarlett echoed him from her side. Same idea. Word spread, but without proof, the talk lost its edge. The anticipated clash never came. Cattle stayed where they belonged. Tempers cooled, if only a notch. That night, John and Scarlett met one last time at the line. No tools this time, just the fence between them, whole and quiet. This might be enough, Scarlett said. Or it might be the beginning. Nodded. Either way, we did right by the land. She extended her hand across the wire. John hesitated, then took it. The contact was firm, steady, unafraid. The moon rose high, silvering the posts and wire. For the first time, the fence didn't feel like a boundary. It felt like a promise. The valley settled into a new rhythm. Not perfect, not free of old wounds, but quieter. John noticed it in the way his cattle grazed undisturbed, in how Scarlett tipped her hat when they passed in daylight. No longer strangers, not quite allies, something in between. They met once more at the fence, weeks later, just to check the work. It held fast. Scarlett smiled. Looks like midnight did its job. John chuckled. Turns out peace doesn't need an audience. They stood there a moment, the sun warm on their backs, the past finally loosening its grip. And if you enjoyed this story of rivalry turned resolve, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more Western stories.